everybody. Welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host, Mike, and with me, as always, is Evan.
Kal-El Evan.
Okay, that's what we're going with today. Well, we're really excited, though. Finally, it's here. It's arrived. Cathay, the pre-order. It's actually happening. People are going to get their hands on these models real soon. Wow, are all of our community, the Discord, everybody just keeps talking about it pretty much nonstop. The hype seems pretty real. What about you, Evan?
I'm scared.
Of the amazing new models or the potential who knows what a new army, because I think it's not just new models that they're releasing. This is the first time they've released a brand new army. In fact, not just a brand new army for old world, but you think about for fantasy, it's been a long time since they've introduced a new faction, right? What was the last new faction that they introduced?
The Ogre Kingdoms in 2002. I was
Wow,
there, Mike. I was there.
2002. Yeah, well, a lot of people were there, but yes, 2002. So we're talking literally, was that 23 years? Is that what we're talking here?
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
a long time. So yeah, a lot of excitement around it, but also they do have a history of perhaps tuning the new releases maybe a little bit too strong, but we don't have all the details yet because the book isn't out yet, right? Certainly a lot of rumors floating about of what they could be, but let's just focus on the pre-order itself and see what information we got in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so Grand Cathay is marching from Nangao, which I believe is the home province of Miao Ying. Um, Arcane Journal will give us more information about that, I'm sure. It's a nice little bite-sized lore bit, probably a little bit less than the normal army books where you get like the one full page of lore for every single unit in your army, which was great. I loved that as a kid. I was just reading that over and over again. But
Mm,
this is a bit more story focused and maybe character focused and having an individual plot. Like most of the Arcane Journals, like for example, the High Elf one has kind of this plot of um, Corhill and the White Lions are trying to rescue a diplomat who's kidnapped and things like that. So there's kind of this cool little story element that almost comes out like scenes from a comic book or something. And they have battles for you to play that you can kind of reenact those things. And I've been meaning to do that. I really have been meaning to try to like reenact battles from these little arcane journals because I think it's a cute little thing to do for a narrative purpose fit. Well, hopefully we'll see which ones the Cathay will have, and I'm sure they're going to be facing off against Chaos. It seems like that's their main thing, right? They just hate
yeah.
Chaos.
Well, on the one hand, it's also interesting that it's coming out to, as we said, it's the first full real new faction in 23 years, and we're not getting a full army book, right? Like
Mm,
typically in the past, we get a big army book with tons of artwork, tons of lore. Like more than half the book would be those things, right? The fleshing out the faction and so forth and so on. But we're just getting the Arcane Journal, and there's pros and cons to that. On one hand, I definitely would want to read more about that stuff if it was available. On the other hand, if they could get these out faster, right? And we saw some of those patterns, right? In terms of it's the army, there's not as many, it's not going to be as many units as orcs and goblins, right? It's not going to be as many units as more of the other factions, but from the past. But maybe this will setting a precedent. I wonder, is this a template they're going to start using going forward to release additional new factions in the future? And this is the first glimpse of it. And I see similarities to what they did in 40K, right? They stopped, they still spit out the Space Marine, Space Marine, Space Marine, so forth and so on. That machine never ends. That being said, they have been introducing new factions to 40K quite more frequently, but
yeah.
in more smaller contained armies. We're not as fleshed out, not as robust, but you're getting a lot more variety on the table because of that, which is very compelling. So I'm curious if what we're seeing in Cathay here is this going to be the old world template for new factions going forward, where it's a smaller faction, not as fleshed out, but still really fun, really flavorful, fantastic new models. But this allows them to release more factions more often. I don't know.
Yeah, for one thing, because you have a very focused roster and it's all being the rules are written all at the same time, I assume that there's kind of a place for every single unit in the book where there's lots of
Mm,
units that have kind of been grandfathered in and carried over from older editions where they don't really feel like they have anything to do anymore. That like there's some rosters that just get expanded over time, and then there's things that just don't make any sense or like why are they even here? For example, I think in Dark Elves there's a couple units nobody even remembers existing like there's that big chariot that people push around, that the one that isn't the witch elf one, the other one. It's like, what does that do again? Who even
mhm.
knows, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think with Cathay, you have a nice clean slate to start over. I'm very interested to see what the armies of infamy are going to be for this because
Mm.
obviously that means even more refined with an even smaller roster to start from. So I wonder what that will look like. But we will definitely have to wait and see. Because they've already mentioned that there's going to be 2 Arcane Journals, one that's kind of the original Cathay Army release, and a second one which I assume will come out with a similar level of additional models that the other Arcane Journals have had. So it's going to have kind of a 2-tiered release. So I imagine some people might even want to wait just for that to happen, even though I think these models are going to take a long time to paint. So
Oh,
get started.
they're amazing models. Well, this assuming you get your hands on them. Honestly, I'm sure they've produced a lot of them, but I am expecting this to just sell out like right away. I really think they're going to.
Yeah, I imagine they've made a lot because they've had a year and a half to see how hyped the game has been. They know how much a new faction could mean to people. In particular, there are new markets that can open up to this. This faction
Hmm.
was culturally designed to be sensitive to Eastern cultures in China specifically. So it's not unrealistic to imagine that we could see a very large, at the very least, sales growth in that market, even if maybe the communities over there are a bit more separated from us or a bit newer and they don't know about the kind of ongoing tournament scenes and things like that we've had for decades, right?
Hmm.
So very exciting to see stuff like that expand. It's really cool that miniatures can help bring people together, right? And we have this common
Yeah, I
ground to
love it.
share. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun to just again more culture variety in the armies and factions is fantastic, right? I love seeing new art styles, new representation being brought to the tabletop. It just makes it more fun. It fleshes out the world. But as we're diving into the battalion box, an amazing box. There was a bit of a controversy. We're actually recording after they've corrected, but Evan, what happened there?
So the original article they put up, someone must have fat fingered it and said, "Oh yeah, these are available while supplies last," which is I think is a really common thing for people to say, like in commercials, to make things imply that they have some kind of limited supply when they don't. And in this case, it did imply that there was going to be like only a limited number of battalion boxes where they would run out, and that made people go a little bit insane for 24
To be
hours
fair,
until it was updated.
GW has done that many times, right? It was like, this is as many of those boxes we're printing. We're not going to print these again. That has happened. And there have been rare occasions where they did print another round of models, but this is not without precedent. Like this has
Yeah.
happened. So people were freaking out about that statement. I think they just copied and pasted, honestly, from other articles. So oops, mistake. But they did correct it. They're like, no, we're sorry. No, this will be available. Don't worry. We will make more of these. Whew. Thank goodness, because this is one of the best battalion boxes they've released. It's
So you
solid.
have all new sculpts, assumedly, and I think we've seen some rumors about the price that this isn't going to cost any different than any of the other battalion boxes. It has a
Hmm.
similar number of models to the Warriors of Chaos box. Actually, it has the exact same number pretty much, except maybe 2 less infantry and then War Machine instead of chariots as the Warriors of Chaos box,
Hmm.
right? So that's good. These models are a bit larger, or at the very least they look a little bit bulky with all their armor on. So that's great. You're not getting these like tiny little wafy plasticky guys.
Well,
Um,
I don't know that they're larger. I think this is just the new models. This is in the proper 30 millimeter scale
well, in,
of
in
what the
particular,
game is
comparing the
now.
Lancers to Empire Knights might be a bit different because Empire Knights are pretty old, and I didn't see it until like
They
this
are.
year that wow, Empire Knights are actually small. They're kind of weird. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, these guys are good sized.
Yeah, and I think that's just the general scaling up over the several decades. Where again, we're now at that 30 millimeter scale range, heroic scale range. But when fantasy started all those years ago, it wasn't. It was at a smaller scale range, and you saw that in 40K2 from the old Space Marines to the new Space Marines. Again, there was a scaling up, but this is where GW seems to see the future of. This is the scale model range size that they expect going forward. So I think that's what. Yeah, if you put these next to your Empire soldiers or other things, they will absolutely look bigger, is my expectation.
No, and particularly the artillery. It's very big. It has a
Mhm.
bit of a chaos dwarfy quality to it, but that makes sense for the area of the world they're in. I'm sure they were inspired, if not trained, by maybe chaos dwarves, or they were motivated by fighting against them, right? Because in particular, they dislike chaos, right? So I imagine that, just like in
Oh,
our own history, armies or races in the world often took inspiration from their enemies that they had to fight all the time. That's how they learned their technology to fight back against them. Um, I'm also very
that'd be
interested in
cool.
these.
Yeah.
Yeah, the halberd guys are very cool. I think that's probably my favorite like pose that we've got so far. I'm a huge sucker for halberds and pole arms in general. I just really like the look of it.
They look
And
cool.
so they're kind of my favorite going forward. And we've got these amazing transfer sheets. I think it's really bold that they went with the idea of, yeah, you're just going to put transfers for the banners. That's what you're going to do. We're not going to make these sculpted banners like every other game like AOS and 40K do now, where you have to paint all the individual little bumps and they can only be that one way. Doing
Mhm.
transfers for the banners, especially with this level of intricate detail, is very bold, and I really, really like it for sure.
Yeah, and I think they've definitely leveled up the transfers too. I think they have a picture of them later of the transfers
Hmm.
we can look at, but they are some of the most intricate transfer sheets I think we've ever seen. So not only are they bringing amazing new models, in my opinion, they've leveled up their transfer game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so we've gotten here. Sounds like you can either have 2 units of 15, 3 units of 10, or just 1 unit of 30. So basically, it means the Cathay infantry box is going to be 10 guys with one set of
Yeah.
command, which is good. That's kind of very modern. It means that you can have
Hmm.
lots of command groups if you need that, or fewer if you need that, right? And then Lancers, it's kind of groups of 5, which is also good because you either want to have the one big unit, because we've already seen with the rules previews previously that the Jade Lancers are going to have that attack and extra ranks on the charge. So having like this might be one of the first times we see like a actually rank up of cavalry on the table. So
Hmm. Or this might be a prelude to what we're going to see more of in the future.
also possible. Then we have the grand cannons and fire rocket batteries. So you have those kind of two options here. In particular, I really like the idea of rockets just shooting all over the place. It's really fun.
It's pretty cool. It's
And
pretty
then
cool.
the transfer sheet. So if you get the battalion box, it has a transfer sheet in it, which is, I mean, I possibly just worth it just for that because I often just buy the transfer sheets for my High Elves Empire and stuff, and it's like,
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
additional expense just for a piece of paper. But I mean, it's very, very, very worth it because it really makes all the difference for those banners. And this one has 400 transfers. That's pretty
It's a
good.
really, it's a pretty awesome sheet. Yeah.
Okay, and then here's the other kits that are unavailable as well. In fact, it was just recently revealed that I think Miao Ying isn't going to be available for a little while, which is interesting.
Mm.
I do wonder if that means that Cathay got moved up before they. I imagine it's not because the models are ready and they're not releasing them yet. I think it's because the models aren't ready yet. Like they haven't made them.
It's possible, but at the same time, again, think about the counterparts we've seen in more modern releases in 40K with new factions. It's never just all the models in a single release. The first initial wave and the second wave is a very common pattern. So it is possible because the models aren't ready, but
Right.
I think it's actually more likely this is their pattern. We're seeing the success of how they release new factions in 40K, that pattern of smaller releases. Every unit has a clear purpose, and they have wave one and they have wave two. That's been pretty common. I think we're just seeing that same pattern. Now, time will tell with the next faction release, maybe Kislev, maybe something else, don't know, whether we see this pattern repeat.
Absolutely. So we see the Shugingen Lord again. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of these, not only because the model is very, very cool and it has this kind of like a medium monster type
Hmm.
vibe to it. So it's not
Hmm.
quite a dragon. So you can kind of tell yourself, hey, I'm not bringing a dragon. I'm just bringing one of these guys. Okay.
Yeah, but it's definitely that awesome range of the mid-range monsters. So yeah.
Yeah. Super feels like you could have a really interesting character who's both a fighting melee character and a wizard and a flyer and a monster. So they're kind of like the epic, just jack of all trades character. That's absolutely something that appeals to me. I just really like the idea that my one character is kind of just doing everything. Like that's
Yep.
exciting. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think you saw a lot of that in the past with the vampire counts. The vampires typically could fill that category, but
Exactly. Exactly.
a little bit harder to achieve that now in the current legacy rules. So, but it feels like this character is kind of a different take on a very similar play style there.
Yes, I think that Vampire Lord is actually a very, very close comparison. I'm sure we're going to be doing more comparisons in the future. Because I mean, what rules should Cathay have? Because they are humans.
Hmm.
So are they
Hmm.
strength 4, toughness 4 on every single individual, infantryman? Who knows, right? Because infantry are normally, or humans are normally strength 3, toughness 3 guys. But then
Yep.
how many special rules can you have? How much training? How much magic? How much inspiration can you have that then layers on top of that? We'll certainly find out. Um, we see some really cool. These are kind of like your Jade Warrior kind of characters here, and we have the Battle Standard
Hmm.
Bearer. Very nice. I really like a Battle Standard Bearer model. It doesn't really feel like your army's done until you have one of these guys. Very cool.
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just having a lot of little support characters who can fight in combat and make your units kind of a bit better. Always having a couple extra attacks to swing back at the other person makes it feel like a war game, and that's very exciting to have.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh boy. And then there's this enormous sky lantern. I think people are already talking about, and I know people who are talking about the fact that if I wanted to bring several of these, I'm gonna need a different storage solution for carrying to a tournament. Like, I don't know what I'm putting these in. Someone's gonna have to make a bespoke
Uh,
like box for this to fit in.
it's pretty. I don't know if this is the biggest GW model that's being released, but it sure is a contender. It
Mike, I have
certainly
to
looks
zoom
like
out to show it on the screen. It's like it's too big. There you go. I zoomed
it.
out.
It's pretty well. We'll see. So that's an infantry next to him. So I mean, I think like if Gargants are some of the biggest models, this certainly feels bigger than a. What's one of the? I think Nagash is the biggest single model I have. The newer well, I have the older Nagash
I think
too,
this is
but
similar in
might be
size.
bigger than that. Yeah, it's really big model. But either way, it's like it's almost like the Imperial Knight challenge you have in 40K of you have to have a separate box to carry your Imperial Knights. It feels like exactly your point, Evan. If you have several of these, you're gonna need to figure out how am I gonna get this to an event and back?
Yeah, yeah, and
No.
most importantly, without breaking. And I know as someone who uh, sees a lot of people try to bring several Skycutters to a tournament without breaking them, it's a little bit stressful.
Well, I'm going to encourage everybody right now. Everyone has their different opinions of how to do flying, stand, so forth and so on. Again, I've done this many, many times. Been doing this a very long time in the hobby. I highly encourage the hollow brass rods you get from the hobby stores. Use a hollow brass rod. Those things are for models are very durable, can hold a tremendous amount of weight. I've used those for larger creatures. I've used them for 40K vehicles. I've used them for many different things. They will stand the test of time. I'd encourage you to put weight the base and use a hollow brass rod and then just paint it to with terrain and obscure it. How are you going to obscure it? Because I'm telling you, transporting this back and forth with anything plastic will not stand a few transportation tests. Or remember, you're going to knock it over. And even if you don't, your opponent will. So again, hollow brass rods, highly recommend them.
Yeah, I wonder if there could be some kind of like almost like a spring-loaded, like rubberized thing for it to float on. So if it got bumped, the model tips, but the base doesn't. Kind of like bounces like a bobblehead.
That's an option too.
You just
But
put it on a
anyway,
spring, so you just hit it and it just goes. "Boo."
I'm excited to see these on the table, though. They're going to look so cool. And how long before someone posts their sky lantern that has LED lights inside that actually lights up? That's what
Yeah,
I'm waiting
that's
for.
going to be a challenge because again, if it's hard plastic, it's going to be really, really thick. So I don't know how you're going to hollow out some of the inside or something to make it more
That whole thing is
see-through.
going to be hollow. That thing's not going to be
Well, no,
solid.
it's in.
That's
I
completely
know it's, but
hollow.
I'm saying but the border of it might be like 2-3 millimeters thick on the outside. So I don't know
I
if
don't
you're going to
know.
be able to hollow it.
Someone's going to find a way. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's going to be exciting.
if it was able to glow from the inside, I think that would absolutely add quite a lot to. Again, although you're probably going to start up to insist, can we play with the lights off? Because I want to look at my lanterns.
Or at least for a moment. Well, great way to earn some extra points or get voted best army or best painted at an event. That's for sure.
Oh, and don't worry, this one comes with a 115-piece transfer sheet. Just this box.
Wow. 115. That's amazing.
Yeah,
You're
I
gonna have
mean,
so many extra transfers you can use for your army. That's awesome.
it does look like maybe they designed these models a bit around having a lot of spaces to put them, so that's cool.
Hmm.
But we'll have to
Hmm.
see. I mean, I think that the Jade Warriors, right? Do they have a lot of cloaks and things that you can kind of put? Trying to tell. Do they actually have a
We
cloak
don't see
on?
the bat. I don't think they do.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, are there any kind of surface area on just rank and file guys to put? Because what I've been doing with my high elves recently, I've been putting transfers on like every single cloak. I've got all my sisters Avalorn. They have Lothern, or no, not Lothern, the Avalorn transfers on the cloaks.
It's
Um,
always great to have extra transfers. Creative people are going to find great places for them.
do we see the Sentinel again? We talked about the armor design last time around. Um, Again, this guy's on 100 by 150. That's really exciting. I really like when my monsters are in the big base. Technically,
Hmm.
you have a bit less threat range because when you wheel, you lose some inches on that. However, you have a much wider arc, so it's much harder for someone to be able to move completely out of your arc. Oftentimes with dragons who run 60 mil by 100 mil bases, it's very easy to say, "Oh, I'm just going to run next to you," and their line of sight is just very narrow. So unless they're far away from you,
Hmm.
they actually can't see very wide. And having a big chunky guy, he's like, "No, you're not getting away."
Hmm. Yep. I much prefer the creatures on the larger bases as well. I hope we see more of that going forward.
Right. So we also see here the dice. I think a lot of people were very excited about this. I think the colors
Hmm.
and the symbols here on these dice, it super reminds me of an old cartoon show. I know that it was Jackie Chan.
Hmm.
was animated as himself in the show, and he like
Hmm.
fought against you know, man, what is that show called? Yeah,
I don't remember. I remember
where
the
he had a
show. I don't remember
family,
the
and
name.
yeah, and then and so it's super into like the kind of like the Chinese culture and mythology. I would love to go back and watch that to get to learn a little more about Cathay, perhaps. Um,
But the dice are great. Yeah, I mean they've been banging it out. I thought the Wood Elf dice were pretty exceptional. I think very Celtic theme and woodsy. The Beastman dice were really cool too. And these Jade dice are awesome. And in particular, they sometimes miss on the six-sided symbol. I think the dragon on these dice on the six is great.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's super awesome. We're gonna also have these set of cards here. Because they're only half Lords of Magic, apparently they will have spell cards in them. Mike, are you aware
Oh,
that if you get the reference card packs for Beastmen or Wood Elves, that they don't have the new Lore of Magic that they have in there as cards? You know what else,
I am
Mike?
aware now because you've complained to me about it at least a dozen times.
You know what else? The reference card pack that I just bought, it only has references to the core or like the main rule books items. It doesn't have the Arcane
Oh.
Journal items. So I get all these new items that I don't know what they do, and I want to use cards to represent that and remind myself that. And they don't have.
Uh,
So they're releasing it because it's the faction, but it only has the stuff that's been around for a year and a half in there. That's it.
yeah, that's unfortunate.
I don't
I think
understand.
people love to they collect the cards, but I think there was a bit of a miss or missed opportunity with the cards. Yeah.
And I don't want to use. So I'm perfectly fine paying money for cards and then having cards to play, but if I don't have all of the cards, then why do I'm going to use the magic item cards for only some of the magic items I have and only the ones that I
Yeah, I
remember better
mean,
because I've been playing them a year and a half, right?
different players have different
Get it.
preferences. I don't find the cards for magic items to be particularly helpful. I do find the cards for spells to be great. So
It depends on how many
you
magic
know,
weapons you use. The magic weapons can be a little bit complicated with what they do, and especially if you have multiple of them and they're faction specific. It can be a little bit complicated and easy to have
yeah,
that card there.
that's
Like
fair.
I really like the Black Maul weapon for the Beastman, but every once in a while I'm like,
Mm.
what's the AP on that again? I don't remember, and so I have to go open the book to look at it. And if I had a card for it, great. But guess what? The thing I bought doesn't have that in there.
Womp womp.
Yeah, I don't
All
know.
right,
But
but
the
either
Cathay
way,
will have
dice
no
are
such
awesome though.
problem because this is their first book with all of their rules in it, and these cards will be all of the things that Cathay is about to release with. So Cathay will have no
Yep.
such issue, right?
Yep. As far as we know, we'll find out.
It says 36 quick reference cards, magic weapons, item talismans, and all of their new spells, right? So
It's a good
yeah,
sign.
yeah, good sign for sure. And also they're mentioning that the match play guide is going to go on pre-order on Saturday as well. I think this might sell out
Yeah.
because
Oh, I am so hyped for this, and I think don't get me wrong, Cathay is amazing, and it's so exciting to see a new faction. But again, the match play guide. This is something where our community, as well as many other communities out there, have been right figuring out how to take the core rules and how to improve the terrain for events, how to improve the scoring for events, how to make it how to do sportsmanship for events, how to do all these other things that there has not been. The core rulebook really didn't have a good structure for this. And again, one of the things we've been avoiding specifically in our community, most communities, is comp rules. Some communities have definitely been using making their own comp rules, but specifically we did not want to change the core composition of how the game was designed. But we know that the match playbook is going to come with comp suggested ways to multiple ways, but suggested ways on how to play comp games. And we're really excited to see what is that going to do, because I really think we've seen this in other AOS, 40K, other games from Games Workshop, Horse Heresy, that the community loves playing the rules and structures that Games Workshop is providing, and they definitely embrace it. So we're very excited for this. We expect this will be very wholly embraced by our community and other communities as well. In fact, our next big opportunity, this is coming out, I'm so happy, early July, with the pre-order coming out right now. So that means we're going to get our hands on it. And so for our next big 2-day event at Palm Springs Open in late July, this is going to be the first 2-day GT where we're going to the whole community, we're going to be able to use these new match play rules and Cathay at the same event. That is just incredible.
absolutely, yeah. And just in case anyone is watching and is like, would love to go to a tournament, wants to try playing this game, doesn't know how to find people to play this game, the best thing to do is to go on bestcoastpairings.com and just look up, tournaments for the game system you want. Try to find, the set your number of miles pretty high, just see if anyone's nearby within driving or flying distance, and then show up somewhere. And maybe you'll meet somebody who's from your hometown, right?
Mm-hmm. It happens more often than you think. All right. Well, that wraps it up, though. So, again, the pre-order for Cathay, it's actually here. This is happening. People are going to get their hands on these models and these rules in just a few weeks from now. Looks like early July release. Wow, that is way faster than I thought they're gonna come out. So excited and can't wait to talk more about them soon. Evan, any last words, sir?
Stay legendary.
All right. We'll see you next time.